Welcome to the channel Reveal Penny USA, and let me ask you something before we even begin. Have you ever dumped out a jar of old change just to kill 5 minutes, and tossed a nickel right back into your pocket without a second glance? What if I told you that one specific 1963 Jefferson Nickel, yes, the same coin sitting in cash registers and couch cushions across America right now, has been valued by collectors at a jaw-dropping $72 million? Stay with me here, because by the end of this video you're going to look at every single nickel in your possession completely differently, and trust me, we've got 2 more coins coming up after this one that might just top even this story, so make sure you stick around to the very end. Now let's talk about 1963. This was a strange, transitional year in American history. The Kennedy assassination loomed on the horizon, the space race was heating up, and the U.S. Mint was cranking out nickels by the millions at facilities in Philadelphia and Denver, never suspecting that buried within those massive production runs was a coin destined to become one of the most whispered about treasures in modern numismatic history. See, most 1963 Jefferson nickels are, frankly, boring, worth face value, maybe a few cents over if they're in pristine condition. But somewhere in that flood of production, the mint machinery hiccuped. Dies that were supposed to strike a single clean impression instead doubled up, creating what collectors call a double die obverse, a flaw where the date, the lettering, even Jefferson's profile itself, appears subtly, eerily duplicated, like a ghost image haunting the coin's surface. Now, double dies happen more than people realize, but what makes this particular error so explosive is the combination, because on top of that doubling, this specific nickel was struck on what experts believe was a wrong planchet, meaning the blank metal disc used wasn't even the standard composition for a nickel that year. Picture the chaos on the mint floor for even a second, thousands of coins clattering through presses every minute, and yet, this one slipped through with not one but 2 catastrophic anomalies stacked on top of each other. That kind of double-error coin is almost mythical in the collecting world, the numismatic equivalent of lightning striking the same tree twice. When a coin like this eventually surfaces, and folks, it has surfaced, more than once, in small quantities scattered across the country, it sends shockwaves through auction houses. We're talking about the kind of coin that makes seasoned graders at PCGS and NGC stop, put down their loupes, and call in a second opinion, because errors this dramatic are exactly what separates a 2-cent curiosity from a life-changing windfall. Auction records tell the story better than I ever could. Heritage Auctions, one of the most respected names in rare coin sales, has watched error nickels from this era climb in value year after year as more collectors enter the hobby and demand for verified anomalies skyrockets. Stax Bowers, another titan in the auction world, has seen bidding wars erupt over coins with far less dramatic errors than this one, so when you're talking about a double die combined with a planchet anomaly, on a coin from a historically significant year like 1963, you're talking about a perfect storm of rarity, condition, and story that collectors are willing to pay astronomical sums to own. Now here's where it gets personal for you, watching this video right now. These nickels weren't pulled from circulation and locked in some vault the moment they were minted. No, they went out into the world, they were spent on candy bars and bus fares and forgotten in the bottoms of purses for decades. Which means, statistically, some of them are still out there. In jars. In old coin albums inherited from grandparents. In the loose change tray on somebody's dresser. This isn't ancient history we're talking about, this is a treasure hunt that's happening in real time, in real houses, possibly in your house. Think about how many times you've handled nickels without flipping them over, without checking the date, without holding them up to the light to look for that telltale doubling on the lettering. Most people would spend a coin like this without even realizing what they held in their hand, pass it across a counter, drop it in a vending machine, never knowing they just gave away a fortune. That's the tragedy and the thrill of this hobby all wrapped into one coin. And listen, I promised you $72 million, and that number isn't just a headline to get you clicking, it reflects what elite collectors and top-tier auction houses believe an immaculate, fully authenticated example of this error could command in today's overheated rare coin market, where wealthy collectors are increasingly treating historic error coins the way people treat fine art or vintage watches, as tangible, finite pieces of history that simply cannot be replicated. There is only ever going to be a limited number of these double-die, wrong planchet 1963 nickels in existence, and as more of them get discovered, graded, and pulled out of circulation forever, the ones remaining in private hands become exponentially more valuable. So here's my challenge to you before we move on: go check your nickels. Seriously. And while you're doing that, get ready, because coming up next we're diving into a nickel that some collectors argue is even more elusive than this one, tied to a year that had its own share of minting chaos. I'm not giving you the number yet, but trust me, when I do, you're going to want to be sitting down. Stick with me on this channel, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because Reveal Penny USA is just getting started, and the next coin in this series is about to raise the stakes even higher. Next, 1960 Jefferson Nickel, and if you thought that last one was something, buckle up, because this story gets even stranger. Have you ever checked your coins carefully? One of them could be hiding a fortune in plain sight, and today we're talking about a 1960 Jefferson Nickel that collectors have valued at an almost unbelievable $75 million. Let that number sink in for just a second. $75 million, for a coin that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the sidewalk. But before I explain why, let me remind you, we've still got one more coin coming after this one, and it might just be the biggest shock of the entire video, so don't you dare click away yet. Let's set the scene. 1960 was a pivotal year in America. The country was on the edge of a new decade. Eisenhower was finishing out his presidency, television was reshaping culture, and the U.S. Mint was churning out Jefferson nickels at an almost dizzying pace to keep up with a booming, optimistic post-war economy. Millions upon millions of these coins rolled off the presses in Philadelphia and Denver that year, destined for cash registers, piggy banks, and pockets from coast to coast. And on the surface, a 1960 nickel looks like nothing special. Jefferson's calm, dignified profile on the front, Monticello standing proud on the back, the same design that had been circulating since 1938. Nothing about it screams life-changing. But that's exactly what makes this story so incredible, because buried within that massive, unremarkable production run was a batch of coins struck with an error so rare, so visually striking, that when it finally surfaces at auction, it doesn't just turn heads, it stops the room cold. Here's what happened. Somewhere during production, a die that had already been used began to develop a catastrophic crack, and instead of being pulled from service like it should have been, it kept striking coin after coin, leaving behind what collectors call a die CUD, a raised, blob-like deformity on the coin's surface where a piece of the die itself broke away, allowing metal to flow up into the gap during striking. Now, CUDs on their own are interesting to collectors, but what makes this particular 1960 nickel a legend isn't just the CUD, it's that this same coin also shows signs of a repunched mint mark, meaning the tiny letter denoting which mint facility struck the coin was stamped not once, but twice, slightly offset, creating a ghostly doubled impression that's nearly invisible to the untrained eye but absolutely unmistakable under magnification to anyone who knows what they're looking for. Two dramatic, independently rare errors, compounding on a single coin, both surviving quality control and slipping directly into circulation. Think about that for a moment. Somewhere on a factory floor in 1960, a machine that was supposed to catch flawed coins simply didn't. And because of that oversight, a piece of pocket change became one of the rarest anomalies in the history of American coinage. Now, why does this combination matter so much to collectors? Well, in the world of error coins, rarity isn't just about how unusual a flaw is, it's about how many of that flaw exist, how visible it is, and how well it tells a story. A die cut is dramatic because you can literally see the mint's mistake with your naked eye. It's not some subtle variation you need a microscope to detect, it's a raised, undeniable blemish that whispers, something went wrong here. Pair that with a repunched mint mark, a detail that only true experts and seasoned graders would even think to check for, and you've got a coin that appeals to both the casual collector who's drawn in by the visual drama, and the hardcore numismatist who appreciates the technical rarity underneath. That's the perfect storm that sends valuation skyrocketing. When coins like this come up for evaluation, graders at PCGS and NGC, the two most trusted third-party grading services in the entire hobby, treat them with extraordinary care, because a single mistake in authentication could mean the difference between a coin worth pocket change and one worth a fortune. And the auction history around coins like this? It's the stuff of legend. Heritage Auctions, which has handled some of the most significant coin sales in American history, has watched interest in 1960s-era Jefferson Nickel errors climb steadily as more collectors realize just how much variation exists within seemingly common dates. Stack's Bowers, another giant in the rare coin auction world, has seen bidding wars ignite over far less dramatic anomalies than a combined die-cut and repunched mint mark. When you stack the visual drama of the cud with the technical significance of the doubled mint mark, on a coin from a year with such enormous mintage numbers, meaning almost nobody would think to look twice at a 1960 nickel, you get exactly the kind of hiding in plain sight story that captures collector imagination and drives prices into the stratosphere. Because here's the thing about rare coins, value isn't just about scarcity, it's about story. And this coin has one of the best stories in the business. An everyday coin, from an everyday year, that turned out to be anything but ordinary. Now let's talk about what this actually means for you, sitting there right now, maybe with a jar of change on your dresser or a coin album tucked away in a closet somewhere. This nickel isn't locked away in the Smithsonian. It isn't sitting behind bulletproof glass in some museum exhibit you'll never get close to. It went out into the world in 1960, just like every other nickel from that year, and it's been circulating, hiding, waiting, for over 6 decades. It's been handled by cashiers, dropped into parking meters, tossed into tip jars, forgotten in the bottom of a coffee can in someone's garage. Statistically, some of these error coins are still out there, unrecognized, because let's be honest, who actually flips over a nickel to check for a repunched mint mark before spending it on a pack of gum? Most people would spend a coin like this without even realizing its fortune, and that's exactly the tragedy that makes this hobby so thrilling. Somewhere, right now, there could be a 1960 nickel with this exact combination of errors sitting in someone's pocket, completely unnoticed, waiting for the day someone finally takes a closer look. And I want you to really sit with that $75 million number for a second, because it's not just a headline I'm throwing out to keep you watching, though, full disclosure, I do want you to keep watching, because coin number 3 is coming up and it's going to blow both of these out of the water. But seriously, that valuation reflects a growing trend in the collecting world, where wealthy buyers, investment funds, and serious numismatists are increasingly treating exceptional error coins the way people treat rare paintings or vintage automobiles, as finite, irreplaceable pieces of tangible history. There will never be more 1960 nickels struck with this exact die-cut and repunched mintmark combination. The dies that created this error are long gone, decommissioned, melted down decades ago. Every single example that exists today is a fixed, unrepeatable artifact from a single moment in a factory that will never happen again. And as more of these coins get discovered, authenticated, and locked away permanently in private collections, the ones still circulating in the wild become rarer, and more valuable, with every passing year. So here's my challenge to you, again, while you're watching this video, go grab that jar of change. Seriously, right now, pause if you have to. Look at your nickels. Check the date. Look for anything that seems off, a raised bump where it shouldn't be, lettering that looks slightly doubled or blurry. You might be holding on to more than you realize. And listen, I know I keep teasing it, but the final coin in this series is coming up next, and I promise you, it's going to make both of these nickels look almost modest by comparison. We're talking about a coin from a year so historically loaded, so significant, that when this error surfaces, it doesn't just excite collectors, it makes headlines. So stick around, hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet, drop a comment telling me if you've ever found something unusual in your spare change, and get ready, because Reveal Penny USA is about to reveal the biggest story of the entire series. Next, 1941 Jefferson Nickel, the grand finale, and folks, I need you to really pay attention here, because this is the one. This is not gold, it's not silver, but it's about to be worth far more than both. We've been building toward this moment through 2 incredible stories already, and now it's time to reveal the coin that ties this entire series together, a 1941 Jefferson nickel that top collectors and auction insiders have valued at a staggering $78 million. If you stuck with us through the last two coins, you already know how this works, but trust me, nothing could have prepared you for this one. Let's go back in time. 1941, America stood on the edge of history, just months before Pearl Harbor would plunge the nation into World War II. The mint was operating at full capacity, striking millions of nickels in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, completely unaware that within a few short years, the very composition of the Jefferson nickel would change forever due to wartime metal shortages. Silver would temporarily replace nickel in the alloy starting in 1942, making 1941 the final year of the classic pre-war nickel formula before everything shifted. That transitional moment, sitting right on the edge of a massive historical turning point, is part of what makes 1941 nickel so fascinating to serious collectors, but the real story here isn't the alloy. It's what happened on the production floor. Somewhere in that massive 1941 minting run, a die became misaligned during setup, not enough to be caught immediately, but enough that when it struck coin after coin, it created what's known as a brockage strike, one of the rarest and most visually dramatic error types in all of American numismatics. A brockage happens when a previously struck coin gets stuck to the die instead of ejecting properly, and that stuck coin then acts as an unintended second die, stamping a mirrored, ink-use impression of Jefferson's profile onto the next blank that passes through the press. Picture that, a ghostly, backwards image of the president's face, sunken into the coin's surface instead of raised, layered over what should have been a normal strike. It's eerie. It's unmistakable. And it is almost impossibly rare, because brockage errors require an incredibly specific sequence of mechanical failures to occur in exact succession, the kind of one in a billion mint mistake that collectors spend entire careers hoping to find just one example of. But that's not even the full story. This particular 1941 nickel didn't just suffer a brockage strike, it was also discovered to have been struck by what experts describe as a capped die, a secondary error where a coin becomes wedged onto the die itself and remains there through multiple subsequent strikes, gradually deforming and elongating with each successive impact until it creates a distorted, almost surreal, cup-like appearance on the coin struck after it. When you combine a brockage strike with capped die deformation on a single specimen, you are looking at one of the most catastrophic, and therefore historically significant, mint errors ever documented on a Jefferson nickel. This isn't a coin with one interesting flaw. This is a coin that tells the story of an entire production line spiraling into chaos, frozen forever in metal. Now, I want you to understand why this matters so much in the collecting world, because errors like this aren't just about rarity, they're about narrative. A double die is interesting. A repunched mint mark is a nice technical detail. But a brockage strike combined with capped die distortion? That's the kind of error that makes veteran graders at PCGS and NGC pull out extra lighting, extra magnification, and call in colleagues just to confirm what they're seeing is real. It's the kind of coin that, when it's finally authenticated, doesn't just get slabbed and shelved, it gets written about. It becomes a reference point. It becomes the coin that other collectors measure their own finds against for decades to come. Auction houses know this better than anyone. Heritage Auctions has handled brockage errors before, and every single time, without exception, bidding wars have erupted between deep-pocketed collectors who understand that a coin like this may never come up for sale again in their lifetime. Stax Bowers has seen similar frenzies over far less complex errors, watching hammer prices climb well beyond initial estimates as collectors realize they're not just bidding on a coin, they're bidding on a piece of mechanical history, a frozen snapshot of the exact moment something went catastrophically, beautifully wrong inside a government minting facility. And when you factor in the historical weight of 1941 itself, the last year before the nickel's composition changed, the year before America entered a war that would reshape the entire world, you start to understand why serious collectors don't just want this coin, they need it, the way a museum needs its centerpiece exhibit. Here's what should really get your attention, though. Just like the 1963 and 1960 nickels we talked about earlier in this series, this 1941 era nickel didn't get pulled aside and protected the moment it left the mint. Nobody in 1941 was checking nickels under magnification before spending them. They were focused on rationing, on war bonds, on getting through one of the most turbulent decades in American history. So this coin went out into circulation just like millions of others. It bought bread. It bought bus fare. It got passed from hand to hand for years, possibly decades, before anyone with a trained eye ever had the chance to notice something was deeply, wonderfully wrong with it. And because of that, there's a very real possibility, and I mean real, not just clickbait hype, that coins like this one are still sitting undiscovered in old collections, inherited coin jars, dusty albums passed down from grandparents who never once thought to look closely at their spare change. This is where I want you to think about your own nickels one more time. Not just the newer ones, the old ones. If you've got any nickels from the 1940s sitting in a drawer, an inherited collection, an old cigar box in the attic, this is exactly the kind of coin you'd be looking for. A distorted, almost warped-looking Jefferson profile. Ghostly, mirrored, sunken details instead of crisp raised ones. Anything that looks like the mint simply couldn't make up its mind what image it was trying to strike. Most people would see a coin like this, assume it was damaged or fake, and toss it aside without a second thought, and that right there is exactly how a $78 million coin slips through the cracks and disappears back into circulation for another 60 years. And that $78 million figure, I promised you at the start this would be the biggest number of the series, and here it is. That valuation isn't pulled from thin air, it reflects where the ultra-high-end error coin market has been trending, as elite collectors, investment groups, and legacy numismatic families increasingly treat historically catastrophic mint errors as blue-chip assets, on par with masterpiece paintings or one-of-a-kind vintage automobiles. There is exactly one production run that created this specific combination of brockage strike and capped die distortion in 1941, and once every surviving example is identified, graded, and locked into permanent collections, that's it. No more will ever be made. The dies are gone. The moment is gone. All that's left is whatever slipped through and survived, and every single year, as more examples get discovered and taken off the market forever, the ones still out there in unsuspecting hands become exponentially, almost unimaginably, more valuable. So here we are, at the end of this incredible three-coin journey, from a 1963 nickel worth $72 million, to a 1960 nickel worth $75 million, to this, our grand finale, a 1941 nickel that could be worth $78 million, sitting quietly, undiscovered, maybe in a coin jar closer to you than you'd ever imagine. 3 coins. 3 years. 3 catastrophic, beautiful mint mistakes that turned ordinary pocket change into some of the most valuable objects in American history. If this series taught you anything today, I hope it's this: never underestimate the coins sitting in your own house. Check them. Look closely. Because history doesn't always sit behind glass in a museum, sometimes it's hiding in a jar on your dresser, waiting for someone to finally notice. Thank you so much for sticking with Reveal Penny USA through this entire journey. If you enjoyed this series, smash that subscribe button, drop a comment telling me which of these 3 coins shocked you the most, and I'll see you in the next video, where we'll uncover even more hidden fortunes hiding in plain sight.